Welcome to the channel about news from around the world. While you subscribe and like it, we're going to start. The US is not just ready to fight in space, it is ready to do so at any time. This is an official statement. Expect space cruisers and mighty Death Stars with a striped flag. Recently, Brigadier General Jesse Morehouse of the U.S. Army Space Command told a media briefing that the U.S. is developing weapons against Russian and Chinese satellites. That war could start soon and the US was ready for it. But there were no space battles that evening, or the following evenings. The US military was comparing US weapons to those of Russia and China and said that the US would lose in a conflict with these woe countries. And everyone knows that space weapons development in the States has been going on for a long time. The experts were probably referring to a war in orbit. But what got Jesse Morehouse so worked up? Here's a study by the Secure World Foundation called Global Anti-Space Capabilities from April this year. Indeed, there are several countries that have been developing weapons for orbit for years. The US has been doing this since the 1960s. However, as scientists point out, many breakthroughs have not yet been completed, and it is not a question of attacking the Earth with nuclear missiles. First and foremost, space now is about satellites. It is a means of navigation and reconnaissance. That is the point of space attacks, to disrupt intelligence and navigation, to leave the military blind and helpless. Both Russia, the US and China have been launching so-called inspector satellites for a long time now. In fact, in Russia, these are repair satellites that are supposed to relay information about breakdowns in our space systems. But the US calls them kamikazes and claims that they can just break down other people's satellites. The Americans are bluntly stating that the inspectors' satellites occasionally release some very fast-moving objects and say they are testing space torpedoes. But the main problem would not be in space, but on Earth, where all the satellite communications equipment is concentrated, and there are missile defense systems that can also shoot down satellites. Plus there are developments in laser weapons, which we know can blind satellites. So, in theory, Brigadier General Jesse Morehouse is absolutely right. Except it would be over our heads and littering space with debris. The general doesn't think much about how such a conflict in orbit would end up for Earth. Earth would be left without its usual communications, and no navigation, no communication, no data streams. Our generation remembers such an Earth well, but the children do not. Hundreds of millions of people will suddenly wake up one day in the second half of the 20th century. No mobile phones, no internet, no news, and no one knows how it will turn out in the future. Thank you for watching. If you're interested, subscribe and leave a comment.